Welcome to the Confessions of a CRA podcast. I'm your host, Jasmyn Adams. I went from a struggling, aspiring CRA to landing my first CRA job with no monitoring experience or certification, and was able to fast track my career to a senior CRA making six figures in less than 2 years, and then on to multiple six figures plus a CRA coaching business. I teach aspiring CRAs how to attract and break into their first CRA position with no monitoring experience or certification and fast track their career using mindset and career development strategies. Now, let's dive all the way in. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a CRA. I'm so excited to have you join me here today. And for all my listeners who've been on this journey with me from the beginning, I know you're probably thinking, oh wow, she's doing an episode by herself. That's new. Well, yes. So this season I decided to not only continue with the interviews of all the different CRA stories that you've been hearing, but I also wanted to add solo episodes where I share not only some of my own personal stories, but also share some more tips and advice and answer some of the questions that I've been getting in my email and DMs and things like that. So I really wanted to make this podcast a one-stop shop for all your CRA needs, and adding the solo episodes was a way that I thought we could make that happen for you guys. And I'll get a little bit deeper into how the podcast got started later on in this episode, but I really wanted to start out by telling you guys my own story. Last season, we got started off with John McAdory's story, and the podcast was somewhat kind of accidental. I didn't really start out with the intention of creating a whole podcast, so I didn't really plan to tell my story. And that's one of the questions that I've been getting is, well, how did you get started? And what does your journey look like? And you guys have kind of gotten a little bit of pieces here and there throughout other people's story, but you've never heard me tell my own story from beginning to end. So I thought, what better way to start these solo episodes than to share my own story? So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. Not only that, but also letting you guys know how the podcast developed and how my coaching program developed, all those good things. And all, they're all a part of my CRA journey, right? But I really want to give you guys an in-depth look into my story, my journey from beginning to end. So let's go ahead and get started with my story. So I always knew that I wanted to have a career. I wanted to, as they say, when you grow up, right? I wanted to help people. And me growing up in Georgia, I was born in Decatur, but I grew up in Conyers, Georgia, which is a town east of Atlanta. And it's about, if you go straight on 20, there's no traffic, of course. I guess you could get there in like maybe 20, 25 minutes. And so me growing up in that area, there wasn't a lot of exposure to different areas in the, let's say, medical field or science field or healthcare fields, research field. There was no exposure to those things. So when it comes to helping people, and when I say helping people, let me clarify, I wanted to help people in a healthcare clinical way. So at first I thought, hey, I can be a veterinarian, right? I love animals. Why not be an animal doctor? But I very quickly realized that that wouldn't really work because knowing me, I would try to take all of my patients home. So I was like, no, as much as I love animals, that probably wouldn't be a good fit. So then thinking about other options, I was like, okay, well, what else is there? And the only other things that I was aware of that I knew about was really being a nurse, a doctor, a dentist, things of that nature. So I was like, okay, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. And that's what I went after. And from middle school, high school, on into college, my path, my goal was to become a doctor, specifically a cardiothoracic surgeon. Don't ask me how I came to that conclusion. But that was my goal. So I decided to go to Xavier University in Louisiana, which is an HBCU, historically black colleges and university. And I chose Xavier specifically because they were, and still are to this day, number one in producing the most black doctors. And they have this great pre-med program, and everything that they do really is geared towards pre-med, even pre-dentistry. They have a great pharmacy school, pre-pharm, like everything that they do is geared towards those fields, that area. And so I thought it would be a great fit for me. Not to mention, I grew up in an area where I've always gone to school with majority Caucasian or white people. And so I wanted to have an experience where, okay, well, let's see how it is where I'm around majority black people as well. And I just wanted to create a well-rounded, let's say, experience for me in my life. And it's not to say that being around one race or another is particularly better. I just love all people. So I wanted to have that other experience as well. And so I thought it would be the perfect fit for me. And I had a good time at Xavier, and I learned a lot. And I got what I came for. However, the closer I got towards graduating, the more I realized that I actually don't want to do this long term. I don't want to create a life as a doctor. And what really helped me come to that conclusion was when I started volunteering at hospitals, and I did an internship with a cardiothoracic surgeon, and really started networking and being in those circles, and just realizing not only how much effort and energy goes behind reaching that level, which I knew, but the lifestyle and the sacrifices and the time commitment and all of those things that go behind it. I realized that that is not something that I wanted to do long term. That is not something that I wanted to commit to. I didn't want to make those sacrifices. So I realized this is not going to work for me. So immediately I began to go into panic mode once I realized that, because it's like, okay, if I'm not going into medical school and this is literally what I've worked towards my entire life, now what? What am I going to do now? Where do I go now? And you would think that coming from a school that has all these wonderful, great medical, dental, pharmacy, like all these great things, that there would be a better source of additional career opportunities that you could seek, right? And it's not even just at Xavier, but the more I speak to people, especially on this podcast, the more I speak to my colleagues and I meet people as I continue to grow older and throughout my career, I realize that it's across the board at all institutions, at all universities. There really is not a resource where you can find out about additional science, healthcare, medical research opportunities. And that's unfortunate. And so that's also been a part of one of my longer term missions, is to not only help people reach their first CRA job and develop their careers, but I really want to bring awareness to the field in general and let people know that, hey, you don't have to just become a lawyer or a doctor or nurse or teacher. Like, those aren't your only career options out there. You can get into the clinical research field, and it's a very lucrative, very rewarding career field that you can get into without having to spend years and years in school. So I digress. But I was panicking, and long story short, my cousin actually went to school with me at Xavier, and one of her friends was going to graduate school to get her Ph.D. in a science, and she was telling me about fellowships and things like that, and I had never heard about that side of the field, research and things like that. And so I started investigating, and I was like, what? This might be a good fit for me. So I found out about the pharmaceutical side, and yeah, I knew that it existed, so to speak, because I had heard of drug reps, and I knew obviously somebody had to be making the drugs, right? But I never put two and two together, and that there was this whole research field, right? You think about the scientists and the labs and things like that, but then there's also a whole research field. So initially I was like, regulatory affairs was going to be my thing, and then I very quickly realized that I'm not exactly sure if that would be a good fit, just because of all of it's a lot of paperwork, and it didn't have quite enough science and medicine in it for me. So then I was like, well, what better way than pharmacology? Because then that's kind of like the best of both worlds, right? There's the medicine that's helping the people and it's still helping the people, which was my original goal. So I said I was going to get my PhD in pharmacology, and I applied to 3 schools and I got rejected to all 3 schools. And it was devastating because I thought, I don't know, I had never really struggled in that way, and that most of everything that I had attempted to do anyways had for the most part worked out. So I was definitely disappointed, definitely devastated. And at that point, I didn't really know what else to do. So I was like, oh my gosh, what now? And me just going back to the basics of everything that I typically have accomplished in life, whenever there was a setback or there was a failure, rejection, anything like that, I just go to the source, the people that rejected me, and I asked them what happened, what did I do, what can I do? I asked for feedback. I asked, how can I make myself a stronger candidate? What can I do better the next go round? What was I missing? And they told me, and I did it. And so I did a post-baccalaureate program at UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, and I got some lab experience, which is one of the things that they wanted me to do. And then they also wanted me to improve my GRE scores. And so I did that. I took the Princeton Review course and I worked really, really hard on improving my GRE score. And they also said they wanted me to take some graduate level courses so that I could show that I could excel at that level as well. Because in all honesty, my undergrad GPA wasn't the highest. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like on the lower 3-point something side. It wasn't like, I wasn't one of those 4.0 people, let's put it that way. So they wanted to make sure that I wouldn't struggle in the courses. And so I did that as well. And for those of you who don't know, you can register as a non-degree student in institutions and take courses to get that additional coursework or education or experience, whatever you're looking for. You don't always have to get accepted as a degree student to take those courses. That's a side note. So I did that too. And I reapplied and I got in and well, let me take that a step back. So I reapplied to not only those 3 schools, but some additional schools, including some Ivy League schools this time. And I got interviews and offers at pretty much all of them. I think there might have been one out of I applied to about, I want to say 15 or 16 schools. I can't remember, but there was at least one, I think it was Duke, that I did not get an interview at. But to go from 0 to all of a sudden 14 out of 15, 15 out of 16 was amazing, right? And not only that, to be able to get the interviews and offers from Yale and Cornell, I mean, even more so amazing. And so complete 180, right? From nothing to now all of a sudden I have all these options. And so ultimately I chose UNC Chapel Hill. Their pharmacology program at the time was number 1. And not only that, they're located in the Chapel Hill, but near the Raleigh-Durham area, which is where the Research Triangle Park is. And that's where a lot of all the large pharma and CRO companies are. So it was like the best of both worlds, right? So I decided to go to Chapel Hill, go to Carolina, and get my PhD in pharmacology. And about the second year, I would say, I realized that I didn't want to do that either. I got tired of being at the bench, in the lab, running experiments, taking care of my cell lines. I just knew that that's not something that I could do for the rest of my life. I knew I couldn't even do it for another 2 or 3 years. And for those of you who don't know, when you get a PhD in a biomedical science, it's not like some of the other PhDs that I hear people get, like in English or business or things like that, where it's pretty much the time span is kind of almost set in stone, depending on you and of course you doing your work. But when it comes to biomedical sciences, it could be between 4 to 6 years. I've even heard of some people taking up to 8. And the reason why is because it depends a lot on your research project and where it goes, and you have no control over that. And then you have to get your data, your research published in a reputable scientific journal. And some departments require that you get 2 publications. So that's where that time span comes in at, is where it could take a while to get those things done. And I just knew that I couldn't do it another year, much less 2 or 3. So again, panic mode. Where am I going to go now? What am I going to do now? So I spoke with my PI, my principal investigator, and he talked to the committee, and they agreed to allow me to write up everything that I had done, all the research that I'd done at the time, and to a thesis, and do a public defense, get my master's in pharmacology, and then I could leave and go on with my career. So I did that, and just to back it up a little bit, I looked at my options then. I also discussed with my PI too, but I started to look at the different options in the industry. And the lab that I was in, it was a translational research lab. So we kind of did some things that were non-traditional in the sense that we had some compounds from some of the pharma companies that we were taking a look at in terms of how effective they were in treating different types of cancer. And then also the clinical research side in terms of more so let's say the biostats, the statistical sides of things. So I had that little bit of exposure, and that kind of led me into doing some exploring. This podcast is sponsored by the CRA Solution. Are you an aspiring CRA struggling to get your foot in the door and land your first CRA position, almost ready to give up on your dream? Well, I have the perfect solution for your problem. The CRA Solution Mentorship, a 12-week online course and coaching program where you learn how to attract and break into your first CRA position with no monitoring experience or certification. After you go through this program, you'll no longer spend hours searching and applying to jobs because you'll have a proven job attraction system that consistently brings job opportunities directly to you via networking and LinkedIn. You'll also have a clear, thorough understanding of how to successfully brand and market yourself throughout your CRA job search, to strategically sell yourself and land your CRA dream job offer without feeling lost or confused, wondering if you're on the right path. If you're ready to land your first CRA job, visit aspiringcra.com and book a one-on-one sales call today. And then I came upon the medical science liaison role and then the CRA role. And for MSLs, typically they want to see a doctorate level degree. So I figured that wasn't really going to be an immediate option. So that's when I started to pursue the CRA role. And once I graduated, I thought that I had all this wonderful lab experience, all this research experience. I had this education behind me. I was going to apply to CRA jobs and I was going to get in. And I was completely wrong. Not only did I not get in, I couldn't get in an interview for any clinical research job at that time. I could get interviews for lab jobs, of course, but I wanted to come away from the lab. I wanted to come away from the bench. So I was devastated. It was another time in my life where I was devastated and wondering, like, where did I go wrong? How did I get here? And even more so, like, what can I do? Because it just seemed like nothing worked. Everything was it was like throwing darts and nothing was sticking. And I had never really hit a place like that in my life where I literally didn't know what to do. So I went back to the drawing board of how I typically handle things. And I just basically reached out to any and everybody that I could find that was even remotely close to the industry. And back then, LinkedIn wasn't as big as it is now, but one of my advisors, my mentors at Carolina, she actually told me to create a LinkedIn account. She said I was going to need that. And thank you so much. Shout out to her, Shala, because without that, like, that literally helped change the trajectory and boost my search. So I used that platform as much as I could to network and meet people and reach out to people and ask them to get on a phone call. so I could get some more information from them, get some more leads from them. I literally went through each company's directory and I looked for, this is so funny. I remember looking for like VPs and directors of different departments, and I would look for their phone numbers or email addresses. And I literally called and emailed people, y'all. Like literally everybody that I could find. I would spend days and hours doing this. And I had so many great conversations and so many just random meetings and greetings and emails and it's so weird to think about that today, right? Because you really can't just pick up the phone and call people like that anymore. That's one of kind of the unfortunate things about today's society and technology and the direction we're going. But that was all I had at the time. We didn't have as much resources and things on Google and all those things. Not that they weren't there and they didn't exist, but it's not as robust as it is today. And so I worked with what I had, and email, phone calls, I could do that all day. And that's what I did. And so eventually I realized, after trial and error, mistake after mistake, networking, conversations, things like that, I started to see that it wasn't just about my education, my experience, and those things. It was about career development skills and my resume. How was I presenting myself? I was presenting myself like someone from academia, and you cannot do that in the clinical research world. And coming from the academic side, we don't know. We didn't know. I didn't know, right? So that was one of my mistakes, restructuring my resume, really tailoring it and honing in to the keywords and things that are listed on the job description, taking that job description as a true guide and following it into making sure that my resume and things matched it, and taking advantage of cover letters. I didn't even know what a cover letter was. And so I had to get help and learn what is included in cover letters. And then eventually I finally started getting interviews, and then I would get the interviews, but then I wouldn't get the offer. So then it became an issue of, okay, so what am I doing wrong on these interviews? And trial and error again and figuring that out. So constantly practicing, recording myself, practicing in front of family members and people and friends, and just really trial and error, going back and forth, figuring out where was I missing it. And it boiled down to the lack of career development skills. I didn't know how to tell my unique story. I didn't know how to highlight my transferable skills. I didn't know how to ultimately sell myself. I had not strategically worked on creating a personal brand and marketing myself. And those are the things that I know today are absolutely key. Even more so now than then. It's absolutely key. And so those are the things that I was missing, that I had to kind of work on and figure out on my own. I had some wonderful mentors along the way. And eventually I finally got a CTA job at a large CRO. And then I went from there, and that's clinical trial assistant for those of you that don't know. And then I went from there to an in-house CRA position at another large CRO. I went from there to a drug safety position. And then from there to my CRA job, my first regional CRA job. And I've been a CRA since, and kind of worked my way up the ladder into a senior CRA, and I specifically focus on oncology trials, and even more so specifically as of late, CAR-T studies. And I've just had this amazing career, and throughout my journey, people have asked for help. They've asked, how did I get in? Can I share my secrets? Can I share my story? What can they do? They're asking for advice, right? And so throughout my journey, I've always helped people, and I've always given that advice. But I guess I would say about maybe like 2018, 2019 was when it seems like the floodgates opened and everybody was asking. And I wanted to figure out a way that I could help more people in a streamlined way, because me still working and me still doing my job, plus having a family and things like that, it was like, okay, well, how can I make this work for more people on a larger scale? And that's when I came up with my company. And that's when I designed I took everything, all the skills, the tools, the information, the guidance that I had learned, and the advice and things of that nature that I had been giving out to people along the way. I took all of that and packaged it up into a coaching program. I created the CRA solution, and that's when I launched everything officially in 2020 in this one package. Like I said previously, I had helped people, but it wasn't in this one package where it was a full A to Z, step 1, 2, 3 type of platform. And it has been amazing to watch all the people that I've worked with, all the clients, all of the aspiring CRAs that I have not only helped to get their job, but to completely transform their lives, their confidence, their dreams, their goals, their aspirations. To see the transformation has been absolutely amazing and more than I could have ever hoped for, right? And going back to the beginning of this episode where I talked about my goal was to help people, I never thought that I would be helping people in this way. I thought that the only way that you could help people was being a doctor or nurse or something of that nature. And no, I'm doing what I set out to do in the very beginning, but in a way that I never, ever imagined. And it's so crazy how life works if you just keep going and you just stay focused on the present and doing what you can in that moment. Of course, you need goals, you need short-term, you need long-term goals, but not getting lost in the details, right? And not getting broke down to the point where you give it up and you give in when rejection and obstacles come along, because they are going to come. But you take a pause, you cry, you scream, you kick, right? At least I did. And then you get back up and you pull yourself together and you say, okay, well, what can I do next? What's that next step? And you keep going. And the beauty of it all is that I'm a believer in God. I'm a believer in the law of attraction. I'm a believer in energy and vibration and all those things. And as long as you keep the right attitude and as long as you put out the right energy and the right words, stay focused on the right mindset, all of those things are working for your greater good. When the Bible says that he's working for your good, he's working for your good. And just stand in progress, staying focused, continuing to move on, even when everything in you is screaming and telling you to give up, is the key. And that's really the main point that I want to make with my story, is that I definitely had a lot of obstacles and a lot of setbacks and challenges, but throughout the way, I've learned so many lessons, which I'll share with you guys throughout all of these solo episodes. But I've learned so many things, and I really have had an amazing CRA career. I love being a CRA coach. I love watching all of my clients, my mentees grow and thrive, and I'm just so thankful and grateful for all the wonderful opportunities, all the mentors and coaches that I've had as well. But then to become one myself, it's like, wow, to know that all of the people that I've worked with have chosen me to be their guide is just such an honor, and it's so special, and I'm so thankful and grateful. And that's kind of how this podcast developed. It initially started as me trying to create an additional resource for my clients and helping them in their own journeys and stories. And so I originally planned to just do a few interviews here and there. And lo and behold, it became a thing where people were reaching out to me and they wanted to be a part of it. And it became bigger than I even had thought or hoped or dreamed that it could be. And originally it was just going to be a few videos that I posted on YouTube. And it turned into a whole podcast. And it's so crazy, like I said, how life works. And it's just so many opportunities that can, if you just keep going and you just keep doing your best and being yourself, things just pop up. They really do. And it's hard to explain to the people that may not have experienced it or are still in their moment of struggle right now. But it really does happen, guys. It really, really does. And in this podcast, like I said, it has really also been a great networking tool for me as well, meeting all these great people. And just another note about me, I'm an introvert. I'm a little bit antisocial. I pretty much, for the most part, like staying at home and just being by myself and being in my little circle with my little circle of people, right? So for me to be doing this podcast and doing these interviews and meeting all these people, even working with clients, it's like really in out of my element. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love it. I really do. But I never thought that this is something that I would be doing just because of all of my other little quirky qualities. And that just goes to show you that even if you feel like you're an introvert and you feel like it's not really your personality, it doesn't matter. You can still make it work for you. You can still find a way to make it work for you. And it's really just all about you shooting for the stars, so to speak, having a dream and taking action, putting action behind that dream and those goals, and staying focused and not letting anything stop you. You might slow down. Like I said, you might slow down, you might take a pause, you might scream, you might kick, but you can't give up. You can't give up. You can never stop. You cannot give up. And so I just wanted to put my story out there for you guys and hopefully give somebody some encouragement. And you guys already know how to reach me, but if there was any particular part of my story that you wanted to hear a little bit more about, or something that resonated with you and you just want to share, please where to reach me, how to find me. You can DM me on LinkedIn. You can submit a contact form. And any questions that you may have outside of my story here today, any questions about CRAs, about career development, about the industry, please let me know. My team, we will make sure we address them. That is what I'm here for. That is what these solo episodes are designed and created for. So I am looking forward to this season really answering and addressing all of your questions. And I'm so excited. And to all my listeners from last season, my faithful listeners, thank you so much for continuing to listen and follow me. And for the new listeners, thank you for joining me. And I hope you got something out of it today. And I hope you continue to join and get something in the future. Thanks for hanging out with me. You are now one step closer to hitting your career goals. And if you are an aspiring CRA who wants to take this work further, come work with me inside of my coaching program. You can go visit aspiringcra.com to learn all about it. If you're looking for more inspiration, check out Jasmyn Adams, Aspiring CRA TV on YouTube. And come follow me at Jasmyn Adams or The CRA Solution on LinkedIn. You can also check me out over on Instagram at The CRA Solution. And hey, if you like what you hear, don't forget to follow this podcast and make sure that you download, rate, and review this episode.